Hey,
Hey, Greg.
what's going on?
Not much. Just got back from Mike's place, so doing it from home right now. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Okay.
You bet. Let me just get my thing straightened out here. I'm trying to manage it from home today.
So I heard it is pretty warm in the whole rest of the country, but this will be like the first day in June that we've got above 70.
So you know what I was telling Greg last night? As
I'm
Greg
freezing.
came over, we sat on the porch.
It was hot. It was hot.
It feels like every day I was in Houston. You know,
Just swampy.
everybody's complaining about 97 degrees and humid, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, my 8 years of boot camp down there, gets you. We're used to having that swampy feeling, Matt.
Yeah.
That's where you drive 2 blocks to go to the office because you don't want to walk.
Because you'll just have to change your clothes when you get there.
Yeah. So I'll kick this off. Hey, everybody, welcome to This Week in Lumber. We're Matt Beamer, Hampton Lumber Sales, Greg Riley, Sitka USA. We're live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Over 1,500 views last week, guys. So pretty good job. Really good job on that. Let me adjust my camera since it's getting wonky on me here. Hey, Greg, I wanted, since we were talking on the porch, quick shout out to John Miller and Chuck Balsano from 84 Lumber who watch this thing live all the time. And John, we know you do talk about lumber all the time. So I wanted to
call them out.
So I wanted to chat real quick and go over, like, we got a couple bullet points we want to talk about. We can talk about the market. We could talk about whatever we think. So we're obviously still in a sell-off. I just hung up the phone with a big, used to be a big independent yard, now a corporate buyer, and his mandate is put away the PO books, transfer inventory, don't buy anything. Now, we're pretty late in the game for a lot of that, but I think a lot of that's still going on. Matt, Greg, does that make any sense? Do you hear kind of the same thing? Now, multifamily is different. This is retail.
One of the things, Ash, that happens is when average cost is above replacement cost, the retail yard likes to get it down to pavement so they can just reset. And, that's one of the things that, that causes increased volatility in our business is, that extreme and, to varying degrees. Matt, what do you think?
I think our business is prone to overreaction. So when things are really good, we overreact. People buy too much. They get excited. In the past 2 years, 3 years, really, we've had the added problem of shipment delays, and that has caused people to buy double inventory and triple inventory at periods of time when they just frantically needed lumber in their yard and they had no answers other than just buy some quick trucks at really high prices and wait for the rail cars to show up eventually. Well, when things slow down, all that inventory starts to pile up, and then what happens is what Ashley just started out the conversation with is some CEO or CFO or manager comes in and says, hey, transfer your wood around, get rid of it, don't buy anything, put the PO book away. Well, then that overreaction will create the next wave of demand, right? So we're in that process right now where we're starting to see, I can speak as I'll put my mill hat on, right? My Hampton mill hat. We're starting to see a lot more volume inquiries for things. We're starting to see the wholesale community with empty lists that are they're trying to get every inquiry that's out there. They're chasing that around because they don't have to quote it out of their own inventory anymore because they sold their inventory. So they're just working like as back-to-back traders or taking shorts, that type of stuff. We're seeing more of the same inquiries over and over and over again. So that's a sign that people haven't covered their needs yet. And everybody's just sort of waiting for that golden key moment that tells them, hey, we're going to go up for a little while. But in the meantime, people will just sit there with their arms crossed like a mule and not do anything unless it's obvious, right? So
yeah, that's a good point, Matt. And one of the things is, God forbid, you don't want to be the first one to do anything because you may have a $5 thousand higher cost than somebody else. But you're right. Everybody's kind of the herd mentality right now and running it down to the ground. And I've got to think same with the distribution side of things, right? Because they just went through 2 really good years and probably don't want to have a whole bunch of wood sitting around. I mean, there's a lot of deals getting done right now. I don't think everybody fails to remember. And during this whole sell-off for the last 2 months, there's been people buying the whole time. Everything that's produced gets sold, right?
right.
And so there are people doing it. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and I know we talk about all this all the time, is people are still getting wood every day because over the last 2 years, they increased a lot of people have increased their contracts, right? And so they're still maintaining their contracts. They're still getting flows of cars and trucks coming in on a regular basis. And as Matt alluded to in our industry, they may not just be buying 10 if they only need 5, right? Because they're just kind of the whole situation we're in right now.
The other thing that's going on, Ashley, is that, the economic news that we're exposed to in our private life all day long is not good. And so, when you get a little bit of fear, it adds to the momentum that we're already in. So, we had fear of not having the inventory that was causing the uptick, right? People were afraid to not have wood, so they bought and drove the price up to $1,300, $1,400. And now we're afraid of what's next, which is slower economic conditions, less home building, less inventory needs, getting rid of your expensive inventory, getting fired because you made a bad purchase. These are the fears that are now driving people to perform their job duties, right? The fear of making a mistake is what's going to cause somebody to make an action right now, rather than the fear of making more money because, hey, we got this wood coming in and great, because the fears that are now we're running out of wood. Now we got some. We just switched the gears completely. We did a 180. We went from, hey, fear of missing out, to now everybody's got plenty and they just want to get rid of it. Although I don't think that's true either. I think people have done a lot of liquidating here the last 30, 45 days. And it's just a matter of time before we see a general rally based on need.
So real quick, Greg, we had a good conversation last night. We were looking on Twitter and somebody put out how Sinclair was taking some downtime, or somebody's taking some downtime. But does that really mean anything in the big picture right now? I don't see any significant downtime coming.
Well, I look at things, you kind of got like the immediate, this week, next week, what's in front of you. You've got, what does the next 30 days look like? And, what does it look like out, 60, 90, and 120 days? As Matt alluded to, the backdrop that we're dealing with is pretty negative. Home builder sentiment came out today. It's a 2-year low, the lowest level since June of 2020, which is right before housing took off. If you remember, COVID hit March of 2020. Everybody went, everything shut down. Mills shut down. Everybody thought business was going to go away. And April, May, June, home centers were off the charts busy. And then in the summer of 2020, we had mostly peaceful protesting.
Well, mostly.
And that sent a whole wave of people to buy houses in outlying areas. So, when I look at what does the single family housing look like, we know that there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. The started but not completed, it is a record high. So over the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to have a lot of completions. Question is, how many new starts are you going to have? I'm going to say, and we have been saying on this show for a long time, that single family housing starts are going to fall dramatically. Starts are due out tomorrow. Consensus is 1.6 1.72 million.
I heard you may have.
I've got a whisper number that says 1.5 something and a revision down. It's just a whisper number, so it doesn't mean anything. But I think we can expect, housing starts to moderate back, to the 1.4 million, 1.5 million level at a minimum over the next few months. So you've got declining demand.
Does it matter? Does it really matter what they say housing starts are? I mean, even if they said they were 2.0, it doesn't matter. We can't build more than 1.4 or 1.5.
Completions are only running 1.2 to 1.3.
So, just because the number is higher than 1.4 or 1.5, it doesn't really matter. That's all we're going to build. We just have a capacity issue. So as long as we're avoiding the 2008 through 2011 timeframe where we went back down to like 650, 700,000 housing starts, like that was catastrophic. So
I think there was a monthly number of 357 was the absolute low.
I don't even want to talk about it, but hopefully we don't have to.
We're not in that scenario at all at this time.
Yeah.
We got so Billy G just put a number up here. He said, Matt, Greg, Ashley, seeing better activity. I mean, I gotta hope so right now, right? A little bit better activity. And more energy in the market. I am buying, making sure I have what I need for reload in the near term, meaning now through July shutdowns, expressing my confidence and optimism of the market to my clients.
I think that's good. I mean, after we've sold off 800 points, we should probably be a little bit more optimistic going forward because your downside risk now is pretty minimal, right? I mean, you've taken the guesswork out of everybody wanted to buy lumber at 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 and load it up on inventories and double bought. Now we're down at 500, 600. That's when you should be double buying. Honestly, if you're gonna buy a lot of lumber, you want to buy it cheap. You don't want to buy a bunch of lumber at 1,300, 1,400. So I think your attitude is well earned, and it's actually the right attitude. You should be preaching that message to all your customers that'll pay attention. And hey, if you didn't like buying lumber 2 months ago when you couldn't get rail cars and you couldn't get trucks, well, guess what? A new day has dawned. And you can get all the rail cars and all the trucks you want, and you can get it for about 35 cents on the dollar compared to what you would have paid for it 2 months ago.
So do you see, Matt? I mean, do you see customers? I mean, Josh started out talking about how, the corporate buyers are being instructed to take it down to pavement. I mean, do you see a scenario in the next 60 days where, buyers are going to buy anything more than what they absolutely have to have, irrespective of, whether the market bottoms and prices go up? So
just real quick, this corporate buyer also said that they're seeing slower activity going farther out. So I want to add that, right? So so that was a reality too. And I think if everybody thinks we're going to have the volatility and the rodeo that we've had the last 2 years, that's not going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ashley. I think we're just taking that emotion out of it. And that's fine. I mean, honestly, if you would have told me in May of 2020 that we would be trading 550 to 600 mil lumber in June of 2022, I would have said, well, that's great. Because
you would have been static.
In 2020, we were trading for 350, right?
Right.
And people were writing up force majeure letters because of the COVID pandemic. And, nobody knew what the hell was going on. We were all in a state of panic. We were just reacting to world events. Now that stuff has sort of passed us by. We're reacting to different world events. And so, 575 or 550 or even 500, historically, these are good numbers. And I think that also, not only is it a good number from a sales perspective, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the bottom, right? Okay, what is the bottom in lumber? Literally, what's the cheapest you've ever bought lumber, right? Think about it.
The only way you buy the bottom of the market, just keep buying.
Yeah, eventually you'll get it right.
If you keep buying, you're going to buy the bottom. And
I mean,
the only time I've ever bought the bottom of the market is by accident.
Right. The bottom in this scenario that we are today, where labor costs have gone up, log costs have gone up, production costs have gone up. The access to labor has gone down, right? So it's hard to fill jobs if you lose a millwright, or if you lose a sawyer, if you lose a trucker. It's hard to replace those people in this environment that we're in these days. And so
it's going to get easier, my friend.
It will. But I mean, at the moment, there's some high costs of doing business in production of lumber and other materials too. It's not just lumber. Just manufacturing costs more.
Matt, who cares? You got mills that are making $1 billion in a quarter, and we're talking about we're worried about cost here. You know what? This is a conversation that means something after a couple of quarters of mills losing money on their financial statements. At this point in time, you got record profit in the first quarter, massive profits in the second quarter, which are going to flow through. And, we'll see. Third quarter numbers aren't going to be out until sometime late October, November. I mean, I think it's this. All the talk about is silliness in my viewpoint, but that's just my point.
Well, the only point I'm a little long-winded, but I was trying to get to this point. That means that back when I was buying lumber at $250 mil, say 2013, so 9 years ago, mills costs were much lower than they are today. And I just don't see us going back to that environment where we're selling lumber at $250 mil for any extended period of time. I just think that the shutdown point and the pain point is so much higher now than it was, that sure, in the short term, the mills are going to keep running, but in the long run, if these conditions persist, that just cost more to produce, I just don't think we're ever going back to 250. Right?
The history of lumber is that it basically bounces around the cost of production. And, that's going to be a question mark, is where is that new number? If it's not 250, I agree with you. And, maybe it's not 400 either. Some people say, oh, it's 600. I don't think it's that number either. But typically the market overcorrects well below the cost and then bounces back, and then it bounces around that number. That's kind of the scenario that I think that we're probably moving towards. Just like I think that the overall economy is going to move into, at best, a stagflationary environment.
How about, let's talk a little bit about your local real estate conditions. Have you guys ever, do you stay in contact with any realtor friends, or do you know what's going on in the Chicago metro area?
Greg and I were just talking about it. It's still off the hook. Or
Ashley's neighborhood's a bubble.
Or as the kids would say, it's lit, L-I-T, in this neighborhood still.
It's bussing, it's fire.
Stuff goes on the dark pool market that these real estate agents all have, that is listed in top secret chat rooms, and then it's sold before it goes on the real market. It's, you got signs in front yards say coming soon, and then it never goes in the market because it gets sold. But I had a question with Greg. Is that because in our neighborhood, a lot of people are moving to the city, young kids that haven't in 20 years that want to leave the city and come here? So locally, if I just looked at it locally, I'd be like, but there's not a lot of inventory either, right?
Yeah. I mean, Ash, we live in a, kind of a unique area in that, I mean, real estate prices are barely back to where they were, before the Great Recession. I mean, the real estate prices came down here and they haven't bounced back. I mean, there's places in the country where they're 2x those prices. We just happen to live in, a dead zone for real estate. I mean,
what does a starter home cost in Chicago metro area?
I have
the cheapest entry level home you could buy in Chicago metro.
It all depends on how far out you want to go, right?
I'm talking like something within
if you want to be
10 miles of Chicago.
If you want to be in Northwest Indiana, those are places that 5 years ago sold between 120 and 140 or 50 grand, and now they're 250 to 300, right?
Yeah. So north, if
So
you want to
if
go
you
north,
want to go out into the cornfields, like on your way to Iowa, I mean, it's a function of land. It's more a function of land value than anything, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
Like in the Chicago close-in suburbs, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house goes for what, 350, 400?
It all
450?
depends. I mean, there's such a variety in the metro area, Matt. I mean, there's no way you can generalize it. You really can't. I mean,
So in Portland, it's about 450 for a starter home. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. It needs probably $50,000 to $100,000 worth of work. That house used to cost $250 about 10, 12 years ago. Now it's $400 to $450.
yeah, I mean,
They're not selling. Here's the funny thing: they're not selling.
years of 20% annual increase in home values.
Sean put up a good number, about 450,000 starter homes, Chicago Metro. I guess that would.
So I'm assuming that Chicago and Portland are similar in terms of price structure, but what's happened is the people at the bottom end that could afford that 450 6 months ago can't afford it now. They can only afford 350.
Well, so that brings us to
Wait till mortgage rates hit 7.5% or 8%.
Let's talk about mortgage rates. So we've almost
Just saying,
doubled.
we're eliminating the bottom of the market. They can't afford the bottom of the market price. Okay?
Which is why
So that's what's happening in
multifamily
real
is going to
estate
be.
right now.
Which is why multifamily is the place things is going to hold up. Because if you also saw, the thing came out the other day, record increase in rents. So rental prices are going way up, which is going to be a positive for the multifamily sector.
The rent is too high.
The guy from New York, yeah.
So Kevin Otto.
My daughter says that too. She's like, "What do you mean? It's $4,200 for a closet?"
Oh my
So
gosh.
Kevin Otto put, if a bottom is actually forming, what are your exceptions after the bottom happens over the next 30 to 60 days?
Expectations, I think, is what he's
Going sideways, bouncing. If it bounces, how high? So, I mean, I'm not sure what item you're looking at here. I mean, Southern Yellow Pine kind of led this thing down. Greg, go ahead. What's your thought?
No, I'm putting my finger up in the air to try and come up with the answer for Kevin.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't have any real big expectations about massive bounces, $300-$400 rallies. I think you can kiss that goodbye in this environment. $100-$200 is reasonable. But then, I think they fizzle out over
Unless something changes. And I mean, look, at the Fed comes out today and is going to do rates. I mean, what's built in right now, Greg or Matt? Is it 0.75 as expected now, or 0.5?
0.75 is the number.
They push that up to 0.75. Hey, listen, they'd do a great job if they came out and raised it a point and said they're going to raise it another point, because that would rock everybody back and go, hey, they're really serious about taking care of inflation, right? That would probably be a big positive at this point in time.
Well, I think they're serious, dude. Their political future depends on solving this riddle, right?
Well,
this is the number one thing that people in America are concerned about, is the cost of living, right?
So you guys, we're all in consensus here. This is not transitory at this point.
We knew it wasn't transitory a year ago when we talked about it.
We joked about it and mocked them for saying that a year ago. And we're not smarter than the average bear, right? It's just that lie was so stupid. It was just such a dumb thing to say. It was so transparently dumb. When you shove a bunch of money out into the world,
tune in every day and you can get that. You know what? Tune in every day.
I mean, I don't have an economics degree. I'm not Brian, and I knew that was BS a year ago. So let's just
my question,
move on.
Greg, you mentioned, I don't know, a month ago that sometime in the next 2 years we will build 2 million homes. Are you still sticking to that?
No.
I was just curious. I mean, I'm not calling you out on that. I'm just asking.
I'm going to say that I think, given where we are now, we're going to have a setback, and we're going to moderate until we shake inflation and we get pro-growth policies, right? I mean, the most embarrassing thing for me as an American is to see our leadership say that there's nothing they can do when there's, Matt and I are not that smart, and we could come up with a list of 20 things that the government could do that would help people and not hurt them. The crime is that they stand up there and say that they don't want to hurt people, but then their policies do nothing but that. It's disgusting, frankly. Frankly, it's disgusting. But I don't want to go down that road.
I just think that's what happens when policy wonks and academics get control of the country and they start pushing ideas that have not been proven. Now, I mean, you want to run your country based on economic theories that have been tested and proven over 100 years' time, right? You don't want to run your country based on some new idea that's never been tested or proven.
Well, it's also,
I'm sorry.
It's interesting, Greg. The reason I asked you that question is, and what Matt was saying, we're trying to, this kind of tied into what Kevin says, things are changing so quickly right now. What we thought a month ago is a lot different than what we may think today. And
what I am going to say, Ash, is I think that we will build 2 million houses again. And what I will tell you is that when we do, I'm going to retire. And I'm just saying this because we've only done it 2 times in history prior, and it preceded a massive housing collapse and nuclear winter. And I just don't want to do that again. That's all. I don't want to do it again.
Gotcha. Well, look,
but I probably pushed that out. If I look at those cycles, they're like, the last one was what? It was 90. It was 20-year cycle.
So we built 3 million 3 times in the last 25 years, right? 30 years since 1980.
2 million twice.
40 years.
2 million twice.
Thought we touched it 3 times.
And I'm just saying is kind of at a level, not a month to month level. But yeah, it was we did it back in the late 70s, and we did it in 2005. So that was 25 years. So that pushes out 8 years. Gotcha. So I got 8 years left.
Look, we're right up against the half an hour. I think we covered a lot, and we left a lot open to talk about next week. Potentially we'll see how the market changes. So if you want to talk to Greg, Sitka USA, Matt Beamer, Hampton Lumber Sales, I'm with mxlumber.com. I just wanted to give a testimonial. A person in Des Moines, Iowa, told us the other day is actually buying a car today on 92 and 5/8. They're a big contractor that can take in rail cars. And they said, hey, they went to all their local yards and the pricing was still like $7 for 92 and 5/8 instead of $4 something buying cars. So that leads back to what you were saying, Greg. A lot of people are still have pricing power and they're trying to bring it to the ground, right? To do the great reset on lumber pricing.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate the time today. Thanks for it. Hopefully that was good information, and we'll look forward to doing it again next week. And Matt Lehman and I are tomorrow at noon Central Time with lunch with Lumberman, and then Friday we have the Smart Market at Materials Exchange at noon also.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ash.
Hey, you guys have a great day.
Cheers.
Matt, thank you. All right.